So, guys, welcome to the very first ever Talk Bigfoot with the ABRO. And as you can see, I'm in the woods. Um, Something different, I suppose. Most of these interviews and stuff, you get them coming from a studio or somebody's back room, whatever the case is, somebody's shed, somebody's garage. But I've decided to come from the woods, and this is actually the exact spot where I had a encounter on this very day last year. Um, I was growled at for 90 seconds here by something I can't explain. Never heard it before in my life. Initially thought it was a big cat or something like that, but it was not. Um, but yeah, just after that, um, we actually went live after that, and uh, well, I'll talk a bit about that later on with my first guest. But uh, certainly, we're at a very active spot here, coming from an active spot, and my first ever guest on Talk Bigfoot with the ABRO is none other than Mr. Jim Bradley. Uh, Jim is the new president of the Irish Bigfoot Research Organisation. He's been the president from the 31st of July. And, well, without further ado, I'm going to get right into that. And I'm going to bring Jim on now. So, Jim, welcome to the very first ever Talk Bigfoot with the ABRO.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's the first of its kind over here, so we're looking forward to seeing how it goes, and we'll give it a bash.
And of course, like I was just saying to the listeners there beforehand, that this might change. It might, we're going to have different guests every time, hopefully. And you might even get a different interviewer. It might not always be me. So, it's not going to be a regular thing. Hopefully, it will be pretty regular, but uh, we can't promise that it'll be a regular weekly thing, obviously, but certainly it will be as much as we can.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, Jim, just gonna basically introduce you to the listeners. You're the new president of the ABRO, and of course we'll get into that in a bit more detail later on. But just for the view for the listeners, Jim, um, who don't maybe know you, I'm sure most of them probably don't know you. Can you maybe just tell us how exactly you got into research in the first place?
Yeah, that's going back a good long time ago. I think everybody really got into it through the Patterson and Gimlin footage. I think I seen that when I was a kid, and it was on the TV many moons ago. Uh, it's one of those things that stick in your. No, it doesn't matter how old you are. You sort of see it, and you go, "Wow, it's." I was enthralled by it. I couldn't believe it. But from then on, I was, the initial time I was interested, very interested then when I was young. I was very young at the time, but it did stick in my head. But it was only really when the Finding Bigfoot show started off many years ago. Season one started off donkeys years ago. That I started watching it. When I saw the trailer, initially for the first one, I was again enthralled by it. I couldn't wait for it to start up. So that's initially how I got into watching and getting interest. And then from there, it led on to podcasts. As I'm working, driving during the day, I work long hours, 15-hour days. So I got plenty of time to listen on the radio in the cab. So I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and I think to this date, I couldn't say maybe 2 or 3 thousand podcasts that I've listened to, all on the subject. But
That's plenty of listening, Jim.
yeah, there is a lot. There is one that I used to love, and I didn't realize that the chap had died many years ago. And I did email him, but not knowing that he was dead a number of years. But it was the Bigfoot Tonight Show. used to be my favorite. I've listened to that series on podcasts about 10 times over. Absolutely love it. But that ended in, I think it was 2015, 2016 around. But since then, there's been a lot of great podcasts out there, the likes of Vic Cundiff. You have the Paranormal Portal as well. You have Sasquatch Chronicles. And there's others there as well. There's I can't think of them offhand, but I have many, many, many of them on my podcast player on my phone. So technology is great. It does help us to the phones as we're doing now as we speak. Technology is a great tool. So hopefully with these tools, the latest technology we have, we may in the future catch something and for the folks to see on camera.
So, how did you actually, well, obviously that's led to everything, but how did you actually get into research in Ireland? Even maybe before the IBRO was formed, what way did that come about?
Yeah, I was interested, and I never thought for one moment that there was anything like that here. Uh, I did a bit of background research on the internet. Uh, Found some stuff. I was very interested, going way back, not just in recent history, but going back millennia. And then I had the great fortune of meeting yourself online. Two minds think alike, and we got chatting to each other and texting each other, and we set up this little group, and a group here and a group there, and this what that initially led to the IBRO where we are today. But I think that's exactly where we came from. But if you have anything to add to that, Chris, you can enlighten me, because I probably forgot something there in the middle of it.
Yeah, well, there was a couple of groups going about just before the IBRO was actually formed, but I think maybe you had been a member of those, and I was doing live feeds and stuff, all the same sort of things that I do now back then, and I think you can maybe hooked up that way, but certainly um, from them early days, which is only about 3 years ago now, uh, till the IBR was actually formed 2.5 years ago. Uh, it has came leaps and bounds, obviously, and obviously the evidence has came leaps and bounds from then too. But I suppose Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah, true. But we have come a long way from our humble beginnings, as they say. But yeah, it's as I said, it's led to a long, strong friendship that we have between us now. And I think there's not a day that we doesn't go by that we don't either send each other texts or call each other or send
Yeah,
posts or whatever. Was yeah,
yeah. Well, that's probably me doing the most of it, but that's just keeping everybody up to date, probably. But you'll probably find now that you're president, the sweepstake will be changing.
yeah, true, yeah, yeah,
But uh, like I said to the listeners earlier on, I'm actually out in the woods now. I thought it would be a wee bit different to do it actually from the woods. Especially the first show anyway. Who knows, I might do them all from here. But
yeah, yeah.
uh, just in case anything pops along, we'll just have to interrupt the show and take a shot, But it's certainly different than sitting in a studio or whatever, or a back room or a man cave in your case, Jim. So I thought maybe a different, that we get out into the woods and so you can sort of kill two birds with the one stone. You can have a chat with a good researcher, a witness, or whatever the case is, and maybe see a Bigfoot or hear something in the process.
Yeah, yeah. As you know, it all started off with myself and yourself, and it has grown leaps and bounds since then. But from humble beginnings, as they say, we've come a long, long way in 3 years.
Yeah. So, Jim, we're just going to backtrack a little bit more. Uh, you're obviously researching now yourself a couple of years, with the IBRO. Um, you've been not doing other things and stuff before that, but you've been a full time researcher with the IBRO now for 2.5 years, whatever it is. Um, can you maybe let the listeners know what you would put down as your first maybe possible encounter that you had, or Whether it was a sighting or something you heard that you couldn't put a finger on or whatever?
Yeah, it was actually when you invited me up to your location, and we were filming early on in the process of filming for the first documentary. Uh, I think we were walking down the trail just after filming one of the scenes or one of the shots for the documentary, and we were moving on to another location. And the area where we were, there's like ramparts up across this bog. It's a very old bog from a couple of 100 years ago that the peat has all been taken away from or dug out many moons ago, and it has left big man-made lakes, sort of thing. With if you can visualize crisscrossing with these high ramparts of high ground that you can walk along and overlook these big open areas that are possibly 4, 5, 6 foot of water in them. You wouldn't want to be walking into them. You wouldn't last too long. But yeah, going along, walking up to another section. On my left hand side, there was a section of trees, maybe about 100, maybe 100 more yards away on the left hand side, and I just got this in my peripheral vision that on the left hand side I got this grey movement going from the left to the right very quickly, and when I spun around, you just spun your head to have a look and see. I just caught the end of it. It was at least 9 to 10 foot tall, very, very wide. I'd say 4 to 6 feet in width, and grey and moving very quickly. I only caught it for a half a second, but it went from left to right, moving very, very quickly. And I notified you at the time, and you were saying, "Oh, typical that the cameras weren't rolling." But I guess that's the way most things happen, just at in
Yeah,
an instant. So that
yeah.
was one.
Well, that, of course, as I've explained earlier to listeners again, that is the very bog that I'm in now. And like I said to listeners earlier too, I'm at the exact spot where I had an encounter this very day last year.
Oh
This
wow!
very day last year. That's a very exact spot, and that's the one where I was grilled at for 90 seconds. So, and then after that, we were actually on a live feed in Bigfoot Britain and Ireland at the time, and I had it. Well, I wasn't on the live feed, but I was getting grilled at. But after that, I said, right, I'm going to have to go live, and I headed round the trail here to my right, and heading along the back of the river, and got up to the next trail, and I think they maybe even riding Buxton and stuff, and a few others were watching, and they caught a wee glimpse of it too. You could just barely see it, but I got a full view of it because I'm right-handed. As you can see, the camera here, well, you can't see probably here enough because we're on audio just, but anyway, I'm right-handed, so the camera's in my right hand, so I was turning to the right, which means my body's going to come round to that trail first before the camera, unfortunately. And I got a glimpse of exactly the same thing as what you seen. It was 9 to 10 foot tall, grey, and really wide, and it just glided across the trail. So
It was,
um,
yeah, it was the
there's
movement as well. That it was the movement. How it wasn't bounding like a person running or walking. It was just like it was on a track, just moving like it was on
yeah,
a bicycle, just moving straight from left to right, very smoothly.
yeah. Well, a lot of people across the world who have a Bigfoot encounter would report that the way a human would bob up and down slightly when they're walking.
Yeah,
Well, they don't. They just sort of glide.
yeah,
That would make a lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense. Yeah, and of course, that very same night, there was another lady who I was speaking to. Had an encounter earlier before me. She was around here. She walks her German Shepherd around here quite often. Her German Shepherd just stopped dead in its tracks. At the exact same spot where I was growled at. This was like an hour before I was there. But I didn't get talking to the lady until the following week. I was telling her what happened, and then she says, "What night was that?" And I said it was Wednesday. It was Wednesday night, and she says that she got the exact same thing on her dog. our dog wouldn't budge, and she actually had to walk the entire the other way back because the dog wouldn't walk that way. So the dog just froze, So she had to walk the entire thing. It was like 2.5 miles back the other way just to keep the dog happy.
Definitely interesting. It's as you know, dogs can sense a lot more than we can. So he refused to go that way, and that was it.
Yeah, well, at the time I was grounded, obviously I didn't see anything, and she didn't see anything either. But you heard, and the dog wouldn't move as I said. So
Yeah.
that was all last year, and there was three to four, the fourth one somewhere of the same thing, of the same grey Bigfoot in this area. Of course, that was your first. But I stopped rambling. I just wanted to add to that, but till your encounter, just to clarify that it's not just you that's had an encounter of that thing in this area. There's been other people, including myself, and a lady, and another fella who doesn't want to talk about it. But is there any other sightings, Jim, that stand out for you, or encounters, or signs that you've heard that stand out for you in your time?
There is one in particular that makes the hair stand on my back every time I think about it. We were filming early on in our first day filming for part 2 of the documentary in that same location where you are now. And we were on a break, and we had sent Ron, our new member of the team, Ron Madden. He's from Limerick. He joined us that day. We sent the cameraman Ben and Ron back to the car to carry equipment back and to bring other stuff down for filming. And as they approached, myself and yourself were kneeling down, setting up lunch and sandwiches and soup and stuff like that. It was pretty cold that day. And as we were setting up, further on down the trail where we were, there's a bit of a canal that goes across. We were only about 80 yards from the end of that before the canal, or a big ditch goes up. And it was, we got this cry or a call from the far side of it, which we didn't pay much heed to until about 20, 25, 30 seconds later. Ron and Ben were about 25 yards from us, and they were talking, coming down, and we heard another call, low, and I put my hand up to the boys to stop coming down. And when I did that, we all heard the same. Every one of us can put a hand on our heart and tell exactly the same thing that we heard. From 80 to 120 yards away, there was what I could only describe as sound like a woman being murdered in the woods.
Mm.
There was a scream which it changed pitch. I don't know. I've never heard anything like it in my life. I can't even try and mimic it, but it was. I've never heard anything like it before. It was only the one call, and I think Ron went down to check it out afterwards. But he went down so far, and I believe there's a big ditch, massive big ditch full of water, or a bit of a canal area in that area. It was coming from the far side. Do you remember that incident, Chris?
Yeah. Funnily enough, your mind does play tricks on you, and I can't really remember the calls, but I can remember the chatter beforehand.
That's correct. Yeah, there was chat. Yeah, that's what initially. You're right. I forgot that bit. In between the first call that we heard, there was chatter, and when the chatter started, that's when I put up my hand to Ben and Ron, and then after that I told them to stop talking and just freeze. Was when the call came, and that was the call that was very strange. I've never heard anything like it.
So obviously, Jim, a lot of those things have happened during filming for the documentaries you mentioned, and of course, there's probably people watching this who have seen Walking with the Wild Man, and they probably want to hear maybe some insights, behind the scenes info on the first documentary. Of course, Ron, who you mentioned earlier and stuff, weren't involved at that point, but can you maybe give us some thoughts to actually maybe the start where Walking with the Wild Man actually started and how it even came about in the first place?
Yeah, myself and yourself sat down during phone calls and some Skype calls, and well, I wouldn't say Skype, so I think it was Messenger we were using at the time, and we were thinking about, will we go ahead with this? We was in the initial stages. We were weary about setting up a project like this and going forward with it. And uh, initially, the whole thing, as I said, it was to try and bring more witnesses forward. If we did it in the end, if it comes to it, this is what we're going to do. And if people seen it, they might come forward with their own stories. But uh, it was, I have to say, 100% credit to you, Chris. It's the whole idea came from yourself, and I was just a part of it. I just came along with it. But most of the ideas, and you know more of the stories from that location than I would. So we had to, initially we had to try and get 3 or 4 really good stories that we were going to put into the reenactments for the documentary. And of course, at all times, we want to keep people's identity secret. We wouldn't want to put their names out in the open. So everything was done in confidence. Confidentiality was the main thing with me and yourself. So that's where we started off. We had those stories, and it came together. I think it was after about 3 or 4 months of organising things over the phone and stuff that we initially made our first trip up to County Louth, our first day filming in that location. So it was a while to get started, but we had our stories that we wanted to cover. We were a little bit green around the eyes, around the ears, as you say, starting off, but we soon got into the swing of things. But for people that have seen it, we think it wasn't a bad job for a couple of guys funding the whole project out of their own pockets for the length of it. And we, as I said to Chris, and Chris agreed at the very start, that I love watching documentaries on the TV, and then within 45 minutes, 50 minutes, it's over, and you're only getting into it, and it's over. And we agreed from the start that we would do minimum 2 hour show, 2 hour documentary. So that's what we did, and it turned out that I think it's maybe one of the only ones from these isles that have on the subject itself. So we're quite happy. We're proud of what we did, and part 2 is 99% wrapped up at the moment. So we're looking forward to getting that one up and running as well.
Of course, part 1 started off in the Cooney Mountains there, as you said, and most of those scenes initially that were filmed were actually ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, that's correct. But yeah, we were a bit between laughing at each other and making mistakes and bloopers and out whatever. I think we filmed a couple of hours and we only used about 5-10 minutes of it. So yeah.
So what you said, obviously they sort of got the best stories we could together for the first one. But there was some issues there, Jim. We couldn't actually go to some of those locations. We mentioned it in the documentary.
Yeah.
We couldn't actually go to some of those locations because they were private land or whatever.
Yeah, there were a few of them. There was 1 or 2 of the sightings that were happened on private property. So it's just the whole thing of logistical stuff, getting there, getting permission. So we went as close as we could to some areas and filmed as near as we could and recreated those recreations as best we could with similar locations.
So, Jim, just before we move on to Walking with the Wild Man 2, it's actually called The Woodbush. It's called The Woodbush, Walking with the Wild Man 2. That's going to be on in December on Amazon Prime. Before we head that direction, as I said earlier, you've now become president of the organisation of the IBRO. And well, firstly, what way do you feel about that? Or
yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to be the president of the organisation for 2 years. For 2 years, which is a fairly long stretch, but I'm very honoured and privileged to have that responsibility. I don't take it light-hearted, as they say. I hope I can do as good a job as the president before me, Chris Dawson. So, but yeah, technically speaking, I think you're a bit of a whiz kid with the internet and Facebook and stuff like that. But I'll probably be picking your brain for a few bits and pieces. But I think we have a good team altogether, including yourself and Ron Madden as well.
Yeah, but Ron Madden, he's your new sidekick. So, I think Ron has brought a few ideas forward too that maybe for future projects or whatever. Or
yeah, Ron has confided in us that Ron is from Limerick, down that direction, and there's a couple of sightings. People are telling stories down there about things that happened recently down there not too long ago. And they may be in part 3 of the documentary coming up when it gets up and going. But Ron is actively researching down in that direction and finding out all the details he can on those stories.
Yeah. Of course, Walking with the Wild Man 2, as I said, it's called The Woodhouse, Walking with the Wild Man 2. That obviously was a thought, Jim, during filming part 1 of the documentary, because there was a lot of other sightings and things that we had chosen. We didn't really know which ones to pick at the first time around. But what actually made you even want to consider doing a part 2?
Part 1 was, as you know, I was the one we done our own recreations. I was the one that made up the suit. It was a professional military ghillie suit, sprayed black, and you got the other bits and pieces, and the bit of genius there with the red eyes as well, the battery, the lights, the LED lights for the eyes, was in between the cuts, bruises, and many thorns and stings I got from all these plants that were sticking him, over the filming was, but it was well worth it. Was after reviewing, and when you did all the editing and you had it all finished, and we sat down to watch part 1, we knew straight away that we had to do part 2. We definitely had to continue on in part 2. Basically, for I don't want to go into details of people that haven't seen it, but what was found in part 1 at the very end had to be reinvestigated.
Yeah, and of course, that's why Ron Madden was brought on, because Ron was he wasn't even a member of the ABRO at this time. He's moved up the ranks quite quickly. But he was brought on initially as an independent investigator.
That's correct. Yeah, he was good enough to come all the way. It's a long drive now. He came up from Limerick to me in Dublin, and then we carried on up to you up to Northern Ireland. So it was a long journey for him for his first trip. But Raz, from the very beginning, Ron was very eager, very professional in what he was doing and saying. And from then on, we haven't looked back. He wanted to tag along for the rest of the documentary. We agreed, and he is our independent witness. I know he is a member of the team and of the group now, but he came along initially as an independent witness to evaluate anything that we find, and to either say it's either natural causes or something that we don't know what it is.
But of course, that was, like you said, that was the initial trigger for part 2 for the Woodhouse. That we couldn't just let that go. We couldn't just let the events go at the end of part 1. So we had to go back there before we went anywhere else. It's only a short part, really, at the start of the Woodhouse. It's just clarifying what happened, and Ron giving us his own views on it. But obviously, we're not going to tell people the outcome of that till we don't want to spoil things. But that was the initial kickstart for part 2, obviously. But what put you in mind, Jim, for the locations after that for part 2, or the sightings that were going to be covered or whatever?
Yeah, we had another list of, thanks to yourself doing the research, seems to be a lot of activity in around the border region and up, especially in Northern Ireland. People are more willing, seems to be, up the north to come forward and tell their stories. I'm sure there is the equivalent of the stories down here, but just people are afraid of ridicule and afraid to come forward, maybe more so down south of the border down here. But yeah, yeah, we went to the far side of the Cooley Mountains, Carlingford, around Carlingford Loch area. On one of the new locations that we went to, it was an absolute fabulous day. We had to go to that location, as the previous location that we initially wanted to go to was too many tourists, believe it or not. There's a lot of tourists in the area, so we didn't want to, how would you say, filming would have been difficult. So we moved further on up into Carlingford area, overlooking the Carlingford Loch itself, and vast forest there of the Cooley Mountains, just looking in the far side of the lake, which would be, or the inlet, would be Northern Ireland. So it's bordering the two countries, but it's actually the same mountain range between the two. So there's obviously, as they say, the Bigfoot can wander north and south. Doesn't have a passport by any means, but it can wander whatever way it wants. But that was one of the locations that we set up camp, and we tried to use various different ideas on that day to attract attention of various different kinds. So that was one of the ideas that we used.
And then one of the locations that you went to, it was on the border. It was this notorious area for big cats.
Yes, we went to Monaghan there. That's where I brought a very large caliber firearm with us that day, because there has been reports going back over 30 odd years of large cats, not native to Ireland, but large cats in the area. The laws on the cats, people keeping cats in the 70s changed, and there was the increased fees and whatever license fees, and the cost went through the roof, and a lot of people that kept them just let them out into the wild, and they've actually, a breeding colony has been going there for 30 years, so they have been sighted. Sheep do go missing. I'm not too familiar about any stories of people going missing, but definitely animals do go missing, and they're sighted on a lot of occasions, and including yourself, Chris, I believe last year, as you were telling me, you had a sighting of one.
Yeah, last July. It was the 19th of 18th and 19th of July last year. I was actually on my way from home from work. It was 12:45 a.m. And I just dropped a colleague off home, heading across. It was only about a mile and a half from my home. I'm heading up the road, and thought what I seen was a large dog crossing the road. And then I noticed the very long tail and the very fat head. And it just turned and glided real smooth onto the side of the road and just stared at me the entire way past with big green eyes. It was a black panther, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not too far away from your home as such.
Mile and a half.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, they are all over the island. You know, they're all over the British Isles. They're all over probably Europe too. They're very elusive. Obviously, they're black. They're pitch black. So I mean, they could be sitting under a bush and you wouldn't even know it's there. But that's beside Bigfoot, of course. But certainly, you know, it does come into the equation of a cryptid in these islands. But to be honest with you, I prefer to meet a Bigfoot. Beside big cats, back to the woodlouse. What methods different from what you used in Walking with the Wild Man have been devised for part 2?
Yeah, in Monaghan we used different techniques. There was one in particular which I've heard on a couple of podcasts, on different podcasts I've heard over the number of years, that people have played back the sound of a baby crying in the woods. And for people that have ever heard that or not heard it, either way, in the middle of the woods, in the dark, at night time, or during the day, even whatever, a baby crying. We use this also in conjunction with a megaphone,
Right.
and is to say the least, it would make the hair stand on your arms and your back and your neck all in one go. It's very disturbing to hear, and that's one of the methods that we use. I think you yourself, Chris, when you heard it, you were on the other side of on the other side of the trail, maybe half a mile away, and it was very eerie indeed.
Yeah, well, you and Ron, you still see us all in the woodbase, obviously, but you and Ron headed down by a different trail than us. The idea, obviously, is to get something in between us, maybe. Um, but I have to say, now, whenever I heard that, um, it was disturbing, especially through a parabolic microphone.
Yeah, yeah. The parabolic microphone did work as well on that location as well. It worked a treat. Of course, we don't want to go into that too much either. But um, yourself, Dan, you had at another in the same sort of area or a different location within that area. You used the megaphone to let out some calls as well, so you could hear those echoing across the valley there, which was spooky enough.
Yeah, that actually, if you watch the teaser trailer there that was released a couple of months back, you'd actually hear that in it. That's what that is. It's not a Bigfoot call, and it's my call through the megaphone, but it does make a difference. It definitely makes a difference. And obviously, I've used it myself on a few occasions since then, and it does work. It does work. But Jim, um, obviously we had the Trump part one. So, uh, Big Dog was always the choice. Um, for part two. But before we go into actually, what we actually decided on, can you give us a wee bit of a rundown on the field scouting trip that we had to Big Dog?
Yeah, we went out to for people that don't know the history of Big Dog. Big Dog Forest is a massive, massive area. It's very up and down, very tight. 1 minute open, the next minute. But we went on a scouting mission there, myself and Chris, to try and look for somewhere to set up camp and spend the night there, or maybe 2 nights. But unfortunately, we spent, I don't know, 10 hours driving around, getting out, looking at different locations, and we just couldn't find any area of flat ground worthwhile for a camp. It was too. It was basically forest after forest after forest for hundreds of years, being cut down and regrown, cut down and regrown. There was stumps every 2 feet. Very difficult area to even walk through, but eerie, a very very eerie place.
There was literally nowhere to pitch a tent, and we actually thought, you know, that there's a few small lakes up in on top of the plateau, and we thought maybe that one of those would do. There might be some soft ground around them even, but nothing.
Yeah, it was very disappointing, but Big Dog is notorious for stories. There is stories from that which we've covered in the documentary. And the first one, there was a major sighting there. For people that don't know much about Big Dog, uh, it's notorious. There has been a couple of sightings of trees, big trees, being pulled out of the ground, stuffed into the ground with their roots up in the air. Uh, that's been found in a couple of places. Very very spooky. Now, I'd say if you came across that, it's not nothing. I mean, it's out of the way for machinery. Nothing could get into a forest like that. The only way you're going to get in there is walking in, backpacking. It's tight, up and down. You're not going to get any vehicles in. So to come across something like that, massive tree pulled out of the ground, stuffed into the ground by the tree trunk and the roots up in the air.
Of,
Spooky.
of course, many Bigfoot researchers across the world believe them to be like a territory marker for Bigfoot.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. It's you often hear that. As I said, I listen to many podcasts. You do get an awful lot of those stories between the, and we did come across also a lot of bends in on locations, on several locations up in that area.
Yeah, of course. That was the first field scouting trip, and then there was a second one, Jim, where Ron actually joined us to maybe help out a bit on a scouting trip.
Yeah, that was. I think that was when we came up to initially on the day trip scouting around. We came to a peninsula up on the coast of Lough Erne, which is one of the biggest lakes in Ireland. For people that don't know Lough Erne, if you look at a map of Ireland, you'll see at the very top Lough. So you're looking at north west, the top, and so you'll see a long series of lakes which lead down to the River Shannon all the way down to Limerick. That's a massive lake area with multiple islands all the way through that system. We went up there driving on a day trip to have a look at this peninsula. The peninsula would maybe be a couple of 100 yards across by about 2 miles long, so, or maybe a mile and a half long, about that. So right from the get-go, Ron was eager to go, and he found some serious bends within the first couple of 100 yards.
So obviously that scouting trip produced the final sort of hour, almost the final hour of the documentary, Jim. And there was a few decisions made on that day what we were going to do, because obviously we knew that we weren't going to be able to pitch a tent anywhere. We actually had contact the Forest Service, and they said no. They says no, we can't do it. You know, even in places where we could have done it. So we didn't want to get in trouble with them. So with all the field attempts, Jim, nowhere to pitch tents. Even two separate full day scouting trips. We even contacted the Forest Service for places that we could camp, and they said no, you're not allowed to, etc. What actually was the resolve of this then, Jim? What was the resolve? Because obviously we wanted to go there, we wanted access to all these areas, and we needed some sort of resolve. So what was that?
Yeah, just before I say that, as you say there, the forestry service wouldn't let anybody camp in that area, and it's a vast location. I just find that very strange. Are they trying to hide something that we don't know? You know. But anyway, getting back to what you were saying there, yes, a decision was made that as we were looking and driving along the edge of the coast of this vast lake, we could see just offshore, maybe 100 yards, 200 yards. Some of them were half a mile offshore. You could see these islands, fully forested, densely forested islands. They're all uninhabited. Some of them have sheep on them. Some of them have. One of them has actually a little pub on it, believe it or not, which we never got to. But no, we decided to go. The decision was made that we would hire out a cruiser, a large boat that sleeps up to, I think everyone slept up to 5 people. We hired that out for three and a half days, and that was how we access some of the very strange places, and got some unbelievable footage that is coming up in part 2.
Yeah, and well, obviously, like you said, all those islands and stuff are all forested. The whole right round the whole lake is forested. North, east, and west of it, and all the islands as well in the middle. But it's a highly active area as well, Jim. But what was your, initial thoughts about, obviously doing something, getting on a boat, to go squatching? Like, what was your initial thoughts of that?
Yeah, I thought it was a fantastic idea. I can do the rock stroke. I can't swim, so I just go straight to the bottom if I fall in. So, but yeah, it was a great idea how to access locations that were basically not accessible to the general public. So we had a chance to go to some locations, some islands that were, uninhabited, haven't had any people on them, maybe in a long time. A few that we came across, and we left them fairly quickly. We could see that they were active campsites. We left them fairly sharply, and we went to other locations. So we did cover a vast area, and it was that it was really successful. Successful. I couldn't believe how successful we were. Uh, it's yet to be seen when the folks watch part two, but it's a location that I think we will be going back to fairly soon.
I think so. Well, of course, that area, Jim, isn't just for Bigfoot. You probably more of a chance of seeing a ghost in some of those areas. It's full of Celtic history. It's even lots of UFO reports over the years, all those different weird things. But I think the Celtic history sort of intrigued you a bit, Jim, did it?
It did indeed, yeah. Well, we came across one of the monasteries there on the island there, and it was we came across the ruins there, and it's going back to 14 to 1600 years old. We came across that another one of the that was actually featured in a documentary series called Ancient Aliens. There's a figurine, 2,000-year-old figurehead. It has basically it's an upright stone, stands up about 3 or 4 foot tall. It has a face that looks like, if you were to say anything, if you were to look at it not knowing anything, you'd say it looks like a grey alien. It has the small chin, tapered head, big eyes, and as I said, it was featured on the documentary channel. I think it was documentary channel Ancient Aliens. Yeah.
So, Jim, just you sort of briefly touched on the part three there. So, obviously, that the ball's in your court now. You're the president of the ABRO. Is there going to be a part three after part two?
I think there is. So there's a part three. I've taken down. I've written down some notes and some plans I have for part three. I think we have enough sightings coming in now at the moment to get us going for part three and to work to get a start. And I do know, I think there's a couple of more sightings that you are aware of yourself that we can throw in as well on that. So I think there is enough to do it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, we didn't think so because there is a lot of sightings, but most of the ones that couldn't actually get talking to people about them, the witnesses or whatever. And we didn't know a lot of information about them, but so we didn't want to touch on them, obviously, But certainly, I'm up for it. I'm up for part three, and like you mentioned earlier, Ron has got a couple of sightings coming in that he's been dealing with as well.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the folks that actually are members of the club, as you say, the various sites that we have. I'd like to hear their input to see if they'd want to see a part three. I know part two is not finished yet, not even released yet, but part three is definitely in the planning. So I think we're good to go on that. But it'd be great to hear from the people listening to this, whether they would appreciate a continuing saga, as they say. We'll keep going if the people keep wanting it.
Yeah, most definitely. Before we close, Jim, before we close, obviously, I'm sitting out here now, like I said at the start, in one of the most active areas in Ireland. We get a lot of stuff going on here. A lot of stuff's happened here over the years. And the area that you just spoke about, which is featured in part three, is, as we said, it's very famous for Celtic history and ghosts and UFOs, all sorts of strange encounters. But which if you had to pick a location out of all the locations that you have been to so far to jump straight back into, what one would it be?
Oh, Lough Erne, without a question. Yeah, without a doubt. Lough Erne was the what happened up in Lough Erne. How would you say? Chilled me to the bone. Chilled me to the bone.
Mm-hmm. And
spooky.
of course, I think maybe there was you know, there were some problems with the weather as well. You maybe just didn't get to go to where you wanted to
Yeah,
go.
we couldn't get up because the lake is so vast and wide. There's a wind that comes down the middle of it, and we tried several times to try and get the cruiser up the middle of the lake. Or there's only certain boat ways you can go, so we tried to get up, and we couldn't get up. We had to turn back and stay locally. So hopefully next time we do have. We only ventured not even a third of that place. We couldn't
Yeah.
due to weather and the currents and the waves, and we couldn't get to where we wanted to go. But still, it ended up very well. What we got on camera was spectacular.
So obviously, what you're saying is you'd like to go back, get a
Yeah,
bigger cruiser, and do the places where you didn't get to do, basically.
yeah. I think we need to spend a little bit more time as well there.
Mm. So this interview, um, these sets of interviews that we're doing, Jim, it was one of my last things that I conceived of as president before I stepped down at the end of July. But obviously, you're going to be running these things from here on in, and of course, initially, we thought, well, initially I had thought, uh, you know, we interview ABRO members, but of course, is there other ways that maybe you would think about interviewing other researchers across the world who aren't members of the ABRO, or witnesses
Yeah,
across the world who aren't members of the ABRO?
I think this is a great platform. What we're doing, what you're doing, especially, is definitely going to take off and draw interest. I think it's a lot. There's a lot of people out there, and I'd say there are plenty willing to have a chat on one of the for our YouTube channel, and it can only help. We're all in this together. We're all out for the same cause, looking for the same end, and until we get that, we just keep searching. And I do truly believe that uh, there are people out there that would gladly come on and have a chat with you.
Obviously, I have got people in mind. There are actually some quite famous researchers who are members of the ABRO, and maybe if they're watching, maybe they probably know who I'm talking about. But maybe hopefully we'll maybe get some of them guys to come on at some point. But over the next sort of little while, as I said, this isn't going to be a weekly thing. It's going to be a pretty regular thing, but it's not going to be every week, unfortunately. But maybe I don't know how we'll see how it goes. If as I say, it might not always be the same interviewer. Might not always be me. It could be you. It could be Ron. It could be anyone who takes up the ropes to do an interview. But uh, over the next short while, we do have some people lined up, Jim. Aidan McCartan is going to be up next, I think. Aidan is from Ireland. He's a member of the ABRO. He's actually based in England at the moment. But Aidan actually has. I'm not going to go into too much because we don't want to, spoil the show, obviously. But Aidan has a rich history based there, and he researches about the woodwolf, the woodwaza, different types of Bigfoots across the world. So that's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah,
Ginger Lockwood is a quite popular figure on the Bigfoot community across the Bigfoot groups on social media. Ginger is going to be coming on after Aidan, and she's going to give her views, or research views, and views on Bigfoot in general. She's a very well tuned in lady, and has got a lot of experiences in the subject as well. So that's another show that's coming up that we can look forward to. Um, of course, Ron Madden, your new sidekick, Jim. Um, he's the new vice president of the organisation. Ron has said he's going to do a show as well. He's going to be coming up probably, I suppose, in the next month or so anyway. And Ron's going to give his insights He's obviously been at it, a long time, even before he was a member of the ABRO. He's been in the Bigfoot for a long time, so he's going to be giving us his. And then Betsy Cross, who is also a member of the ABRO, and she's based in Missouri, in the States. She's going to be giving her take on things as well. I've got a bird chirping in the background. I keep forgetting sometimes that I'm actually in the woods doing this. But so that's the lineups that we have so far, Jim. Before we go, what would be your plans then for this show that we're doing now? Would anybody you'd have in mind, or?
There is, I'd say, there's a couple of people watching that if they do get to see this, or well, not see it, but to listen to it, that I'd say that are in our group, if they want to come forward and let's have a chat. It's just a formal chat, have a chat with Chris or whoever you want to talk to, and I'm sure we can arrange that. It's just for, as I said, I think it's a great idea for people to talk, share views, share ideas, share stories. As I said, we're all in this together to try and get the same goal, to try and reveal this and see, and let the world see that it's real. But as I said, when I took over this position, I had a couple of ideas. So those are sort of coming into effect now. We're going to try and organise more. We're more active. We have the set up the new page as well that you set up as well. So things have really come a long way in the last 3 years from the little spark of an idea that actually initially came from yourself, Chris. So being the initial founder of the whole thing.
The new page you're referring to there, that's the new Welcome with the Wild Man fan group then?
Yeah.
So we literally only set up there yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know how many have you. Probably 80 members there already. So people are if they're watching, they encourage people to drop by, have a look, as you'll get access to the latest trailers and clips and bits and pieces, and be able to chat to the guys that are involved.
In the scenes, photographs and stuff.
Yeah, indeed.
All the insights. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it gives people the more, it means people can touch base with us closer,
Yeah.
Obviously, we do have our main public page on Facebook, which is over 2,000 followers on it. Just it's called the Irish Bigfoot Research Organisation, simple. We have the Facebook group, which is quite large. It's almost 3,000 members. It's Bigfoot Britain and Ireland. And then, of course, the new group that you just mentioned, Welcome with the Wild Man fans. And that's obviously you get insights on all those other pages too, but there's been quite a lot of behind the scenes photographs posted in that group, Jim. That's when it's only opened.
That's correct. Yeah, I did. I actually posted up a lot of them there myself. I was snapping away there in between filming and just gives you a little insight to what we were up to, and a few funny clips in it as well. And that just it's not all work, and we have a few funny moments in it as well. So we try and keep those added in for the folks to just have a chat and have a laugh at,
Yeah, of course. This is our first ever show, Jim, and we're just about to wrap up now, but we're almost touching the hour here. But of course, anybody else who wants to come on and have a chat with us, they don't have to go as long as what we have. They can go 20 minutes, they can go 30 minutes, they can go 45, an hour, whatever they want, whatever they feel comfortable with. Of course, it's all audio only as well. A lot of people are camera shy. So there's no pressure on anyone. Put it that way. There's no pressure on anyone, So, as I say, anybody who wants to come on and have a chat with us, you're quite welcome. Whether you want to chat with me, you feel more comfortable chatting with Jim or Ron, or whatever the case is, everyone's welcome.
Yeah, I'm available if anyone, you know what I mean. It's up to themselves who they feel comfortable with talking to. But yeah, definitely come forward, have a chat. It's all a bit of fun, and it's just try and get to know one another, get different views, share information and insights and ideas, and possibly share some sightings as well.
Indeed. And of course, the table's going to be turned on me. That's another show that I didn't mention. The table's going to be turned on me at some point. Now, we haven't decided who's going to interview me or whatever, but that's another show that's lined up amongst the ones we mentioned. That'll probably be one of the last ones out of that line that we talked about. And I obviously, be talking more probably on research and stuff that I've done. You've covered quite a bit in the documentary. Thank you very much, Jim, by the way. So I'll try and concentrate whenever my time does come around. I'll try and concentrate more on the research, the encounters that have happened, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. No, looking forward to listening to yourself now come across as you've been physically researching a lot longer than I have. So I know some of your stories there had me sitting on the edge of the seat there at times, but I'm sure the viewers are going to be and the listeners are going to be eager to hear those stories.
Yeah, well, as I say, we're gonna make it all encounters that I've had. So, if there's any updates on Walking with the Wild Man or the Woodloose at that point, we'll drop a few quick updates in towards the end of the show, maybe. But certainly, I want to concentrate on encounters. We'll go from day one, from the first ever encounter I had, up until the most recent or whatever, But Jim, that's for another day. Thank you very much for coming on, Jim. The new president of the Irish Bigfoot Research Organisation. It's only right that you got to do it first. It just wouldn't have been fair for anybody else to do it first, I don't think, because you haven't really got to speak out much from you became president. You've had a few, you've had a family bereavement, and a few problems going on at home or whatever the case is. So thank you very much, even with all that going on, Jim, for coming on and spending some time to talk to the rest of the organisation, to the rest of our subscribers on YouTube and our group members and followers on our Facebook page. Thank you very much, Jim.
It's an honour. I'm really privileged to hold this position. As I said, Chris, I'm very honoured, and I do know the responsibilities that are on my shoulders, and I don't take them lightly, as they say, and thanks for the kind words about the family as well. As I said, behind this 100%, trying to put as much time and effort into this as I can, feasibly, possibly, but yeah, if, as I said, if anyone wants to come forward and have a chat with us on the YouTube channel, it'll only be audio only, and don't be afraid, don't be shy. But yeah, I'm really honoured to having been taking the time and glad to be able to speak with yourself, Chris, on the very first episode.
Thank you once again, Jim, and thank you to everybody for listening. And the next show will hopefully be Aidan McCartan, and as soon as we have that recorded, we'll put it up on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook pages, groups. It'll be on them all, so you hopefully shouldn't miss it. Keep an eye out for that. So thank you once again, Jim, for coming on for the very first ever Talk Bigfoot with the ABRO, and here's to many more.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris. I do appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity of just having a chat and get to know the folks out there. And I hope they get a little bit of an insight into what we do and what we've been up to for the past 2 years.
Yep, and that's us, guys. Thank you for joining us on the very first ever interview that we've done. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you very much. Good night.